With the tattered production that the Uncharted movie undoubtedly had, it was doomed to fail. Now, I'm not saying it failed at the box office. From a $120 million budget, it just scraped over $400 million worldwide, but heavily relied on American audiences and their recent love for Tom Holland as Peter Parker. Anyway, no, I'm talking about the film itself, how it stands as an adaptation of the Naughty Dog series, and why it basically came out of the Hollywood machine the exact way I dreaded it would. Ruben Fleischer, who's probably most well known for directing 2009 comedy Zombieland and 2018's Venom, was in the hot seat for this one. He has proved himself capable of directing fun-looking action that can also provide some comic relief. I genuinely really enjoyed my experience in the first Venom film, admittedly in a 4D screening as well, but aside from a pretty boring take on Cameron Drake and Riot as villains, the relationship between Eddie and Venom was brought out really well through the action set pieces, so I remained optimistic when Fleischer was attached. The thing with Venom is, and I do not mean this as any disrespect to Tom Holland, Venom relied heavily on Tom Hardy's very committed performance, bringing a stuttering intensity to the role. Although Nathan Drake takes things a lot less seriously and is pretty laid back. To pull it off right, whoever was brought in to play him would still have to put an extra level of dedication into the role. Since the announcement of Tom Holland as Nathan Drake, I seriously started to lose hope for the film. Now, I like Holland. He's done well in these MCU Spider-Man films, but he's yet to show audiences a broader range in his performances. Perhaps it's down to some of the scripts he's had to deal with, but he really hasn't impressed me in his other projects, like Chaos Walking and In the Heart of the Sea. So, how does he handle the role of Drake? Not terribly, but not great either. Unlike Nolan North, Holland feels a little bit out of his depth with some of the more serious moments in the film. And sure, this is an action-adventure film, and he's playing a younger version of Nate, but I really couldn't care less about this iteration of the character, and it's not aided by the studio formula of recent trends. The character interactions are mostly pretty uninteresting, dropping in some exposition, leading to a couple of quips, and then a revelation about the puzzle they're trying to solve, followed by yet another joke. And these aren't particularly funny jokes either. I know I'm definitely biased here, being a Scottish person and all, but I've got to mention it. This particular scene perfectly embodies the level of comedy that this film attempts.
Shouldn't you come out to play with the big boys, Ian, because you're about to get a proper Scottish welcome?
What?
Stephen Waddington, an English journeyman actor, plays the Scottish henchman for our big bad in this film. Now, I can admit that taking the mick out of the Scottish accent being hard to understand can be very funny, but somebody thought that this very basic comedic premise should be repeated again and again between Holland and Waddington's characters. Where the Marvel films, even including Venom in this, can produce entertaining comedy in small doses, this film's fruitless attempts leave a lot to be desired. Do not expect the execution of Uncharted's jokes to have the timing, charm or charisma of the MCU, or even the Uncharted games themselves. Now, I'm not mad that the Uncharted crew are laughing at my native accent. I welcome it, and as I said, this simple joke can work, but this, and this over and over again, isn't quite the way to do it. Something that has benefited Holland's position as the MCU Peter Parker is his confidence in his gymnastic ability. The lad is agile, I can't take that away from him. So why wasn't this taken advantage of more in Uncharted? A Tom Cruise level of dedication to the action alongside Holland's agility could have made for some genuinely entertaining set pieces. I guess he sort of teased his ability during the parkour chase sequence, but that seemed to run out of steam before anything particularly stylish comes into play. A real missed opportunity. I honestly think that sums this movie up. A missed opportunity. It's so lazy in almost every single aspect that it's pretty insulting to anybody who enjoyed the games. Action has always been at the forefront of the Uncharted franchise, and that's no different here. With a film adaptation, you're already limiting yourself to a few action set pieces, but a recurring theme of this film was a lack of originality. Uncharted could have gone one of two directions. Try and build something new with the foundations of the source material, or simply try to emulate what the games did so well, shove a ton of fan service in, and give fans an adequately action-packed Nathan Drake adventure. Somehow, they seem to have attempted both avenues. We have iconography from the games all over the place, which is totally fine, it's actually encouraged. What I have an issue with is effectively taking an action set piece from the games, almost beat for beat, giving it a slightly different context, and claiming it as your own. If this were an adaptation of, say, Uncharted 3 and they were going hard on that game experience path, then sure, acceptable. It just feels a touch lazy, and come on, how often do these cargo falling out of a plane moments happen for Nate in the Uncharted universe? Admittedly, that plane sequence was one of the better handled action set pieces in the film, although some of the green screen keying work left a lot to be desired. A few of the smaller, less CGI reliant action scenes had issues of their own. On first viewing of this film, I totally lost hope in the action when early on in the movie we get some sort of hand-to-hand combat that almost feels like it's a dress rehearsal filming, and not actually the final thing. Weightless and lacking the intensity that you'd expect. Arguably though, Uncharted's worst crime is its script. Yes, the action could have had a little more flair and style, but no amount of directing expertise could be able to hide the fact that none of these characters are three-dimensional. The main trio don't really have any innate abilities that are shown to solve the problems. Most complications or puzzles are solved by brute force or mere chance, and on occasion some predetermined knowledge. Antonio Banderas' villain, Santiago, is as mustache-twirling as you can get given the context. The villains backstab each other without a second thought, and pretty much without any real logical reason beyond, we're the bad guys, it's what we do. Mark Wahlberg as Sully surprisingly almost worked for me. Wahlberg was originally slated to be playing Nate, but after a lot of stagnation behind the scenes, Sony decided to take the project in a slightly more youthful direction. To be perfectly honest, I really don't mind this decision. Wahlberg has never really impressed me as an actor generally. He effectively plays himself, having acceptable chemistry with his co-stars while he's at it. Could Sully have been better cast? Absolutely. But I think Wahlberg as Sully is a much better fit than him as Nate. The final act is almost compelling action-wise, but its reliance on green screen make the characters and objects feel a little bit too weightless to pull off the ideas presented. Even some of the bad guys jumping around look like they've just come out of the DCEU, the way they move about. Oh, and the double crossing unnecessarily complicates things randomly. The Papa John sequence is pretty shameless, but what's really bleak is the low energy action and dialogue. From the restrained hits to the painfully dry banter, the whole experience oozes a lack of passion in every department, which is sadly not jarring from the rest of the film. Holland almost got a really fun moment where he gets to goof around on the ship as Captain Nate, but no, that's too fun. Sully had to put a stop to it with some stupid Jack Sparrow quip. By the end of the film, I had a pretty bad taste in my mouth, dismissing the soundtrack as well. It didn't feel too impactful, which, after listening to the whole motion picture album without any movie to get in its way, I certainly take back. It's not going to win any awards, but it's arguably my favourite aspect of the film's production after listening to it through solo. Maybe it doesn't step up to Greg Edmondson's soundtrack for those PS3 Uncharted games, but Ramin Djawadi can at least claim he wasn't slacking off whilst composing it. The film was doomed to fail from the moment it was announced. Adapting an already pretty cinematic video game to me seems like it's always going to be an uphill climb. Taking away the interactivity and either interjecting an over-reliance on the cinematic moments or just going bananas with this relatively safe and straightforward film that we ended up getting, and you're always going to feel like something is lacking. It's pretty much the bane of every video game movie adaptation, but for Uncharted it was always going to be a tough sell. The HBO Last of Us series, arguably even safer being so closely adapted, is perhaps taking the approach that I think would have been needed for this film to be anything other than bad, but we still have to wait and see if that Last of Us series is up to snuff. The Martin Sophie Dahl fan film from 2014, Uncharted Ambushed, is a pretty unsubtle and lower budget iteration of the opening sequence from the first Uncharted game, Drake's Fortune. Although the action is a bit tame in moments, the lack of budget excuses that, and the structure provided from the source material holds up in the live action format. The Nathan Fillion-led film, directed by Alan Ungar, leaves a lot to be desired though. Not necessarily in the context of this fan film, but the promise of this Nathan Fillion performance as Drake in a full feature, especially as he was championed as the live action lead back in 2010. The Sophie Dahl film may have been faithful to the visuals and pacing of the game, but the Ungar and Fillion film brings us a more genuine feeling Nate. Fillion feels ripped almost straight out of the games, wisecracking, amiable, and with a lot of his mannerisms coming through well in the live action format. Although some of the action perhaps won't be as engaging as playing through as Nate yourself, it certainly holds up despite being on a shoestring budget. Oh, and Stephen Lang as Sully is brilliant. He's a lot less eccentric than Wahlberg, and, you know, actually feels like an actor acting as a character and not just an exaggerated version of themselves. He just oozes that Sully charm. These two fan films aren't exceptionally unique beyond the games, but they do achieve a form of adaptation in a much more engaging manner than the blockbuster version. Sometimes development hell projects just shouldn't be completed. When I first saw the trailer for Uncharted, I noted down my worry that it'd end up lacking any flair or creativity, and I was sadly correct. To compare it to Indiana Jones or any other classical adventure films would just be insulting, hence why I've avoided that comparison in this video despite their obvious inspiration. The film was only interested in getting to the next set piece as fast as it possibly could, ignoring any nuance that could have been explored about our lead characters, leaving a boring mess that leads us to a final scene, teasing another one. Only time will tell whether the sequel ever comes into fruition. Obviously, this production had many issues, a lot of reshuffling of personnel behind the scenes, rewrites and delays, but that's still no excuse for the way this film came out. As 2023 begins, I thought it'd be about time to revisit my thoughts on Uncharted, arguably the most forgettable movie of 2022. After rewatching it at home, my opinion remained firmly negative. It almost seems proud of its shortcomings and never really attempts to shift its course towards anything that's even mildly compelling as the film goes on. And that is why this was an Uncharted failure. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the Uncharted movie, the franchise's future, and how it compares to the games in the comments section below. With the turn of the new year, you might be considering getting into better shape, trying to get that Nathan Drake bod. One thing that can hinder that though is lower testosterone. Today's sponsor, Fountain TRT, are offering an evaluation kit for just $1. Low T levels can cause a number of physical issues, so it's always good to know where you're at. There are a few natural remedies, but if you really need assistance, you can consider TRT, which Fountain can help you explore. Make sure to look into it yourself, and all of my US viewers can grab the evaluation deal for $1 right now through the link on screen or in the description below. Thank you very much for watching. My name is Andrew or Stally111. Make sure to drop a like, drop a comment, and subscribe if you've not done so already, and I'll see you on the next video. Bye bye.